This is my audience for Speech 2 of my Basic Speak and Listen class for Pensacola State College. Have you ever wondered how to perfectly capture all of your special moments in life? Knowing some simple photography tips and tricks can help you do just that. My name is Bridget Arnold, and as a full-time college student and a mom, I have taken some photography classes to help capture my special moments. Learning how to navigate some simple camera features will allow anyone to take great photographs. No matter what the occasion, whether it's a birthday, a wedding, or even taking pictures of your little one, you can always guarantee some amazing images. I will teach you some simple steps to achieve great photographs, how to apply these tips to portrait photography, and how to apply these tips to landscape photography. Some basic camera tips that are extremely important when you get started is making sure your camera is always in a good working order. You need to make sure that your lens cap is off, your camera can turn on, and you need to make sure that it is charged. Knowing how to hold the camera is also extremely important. You need to make sure that you're holding it as steady as possible in order to get good, clear images and that your fingers are not in front of the flash. Checking your background is also something extremely important. You don't want to be taking pictures and getting amazing photographs of your subject only to go back and view them and have a car messing up your background. Learning some basic features on the camera can be beneficial, especially shutter speed and aperture. Learning about the shutter speed and aperture is an absolute game changer in photography. According to the Digital Photography School, Digital Photography Tips and Tricks for Beginners, shutter speed controls the amount of time the shutter will stay open. The shutter speed is measured in fractions of seconds, such as 1/1000th. In this case, the bigger the number in the denominator, the faster the shutter speed. Using a shutter speed less than 1/60th will require a tripod to avoid camera shake. Shutter speed allows us to control how motion is captured in a photograph. To freeze motion, like this photograph here, where you can clearly see the water droplets, you would use a fast shutter speed. To blur motion, like this image here, where the motion is blurred but the subject is clear, you will need to use a slower shutter speed. Now that you know some basic camera tips, I can teach you how to apply this for aperture settings as well. Also, according to the Digital School of Photography, Tips and Tricks for Beginners, aperture is simply the opening in the lens. Aperture is measured in f-stops, but will appear as f/a number on your camera. The smaller the f-stop, the more light is allowed, and vice versa. Aperture has a really big effect on your depth of field. Depth of field means how much of your photograph is in focus. Whether the back is blurry and your subject is focused, or your whole photograph is in focus. The smaller the f-stop on your aperture setting will give you a shallow depth of field. Like this picture here, where you can clearly see every bit of the photograph. Using a larger f-stop will give you a larger depth of field, like this photograph here, where a lot of it's blurry, but you can see clearly the petals and every part of the flower you're wanting to photograph. Using these tips and tricks for shutter speed and aperture, I can teach you how to put this into a great way to capture portrait pictures. Using an aperture setting of around f/2.8 will allow the subject of your portraits to be in focus while the background is blurry, like this image here. You can clearly see the person while the background is blurry. However, have many subjects like a family, you will need to use a larger f-stop in order to clearly see all of the people. Always check the lighting before you take your portraits. A soft lighting will create a more natural glow in a picture, and the best time to take pictures by natural lighting is early morning and late afternoon. Using front and back lighting are extremely beneficial. Front lighting is when you have a light in front of you pointing at your subject, while back lighting is where there is a light behind you coming back towards the camera. Using these tips for landscape or nature photography can create breathtaking images. This is my personal favorite style of photography to use. Landscape is probably the most versatile subject to photograph in my opinion. In landscape, I use both large and small aperture settings depending on what I want my image to look like. Landscape is a subject where the photographer can clearly be themselves. You can voice what you're thinking, whether it's an abstract thought or just plain taking pictures of flowers or anything like that. When you use your shutter speed, you can take pictures of motion with insects, rushing water, wind in the trees, or anything of that nature. An important tip in landscape photography is to move around. Take many pictures in different angles so you get a different feel of what you're imaging. I hope that these simple camera tips, portrait tips, and landscape tricks will help you achieve great photographs. Using these simple tips and tricks can create memories that will last a lifetime, no matter how old the photographs may get. I hope that 20 years from now, you can look back at the images you took using these tips, and you can clearly see them like they just happened yesterday.